Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. Today, I will be talking about the concept of viscosity and thermal recovery schemes. And this is really, um, I've been doing some preparation work for my talk for Canadian Heavy Oil Association, which will be in October 29th. I shared the link for invite for people on X and on LinkedIn. But leave me a comment if you're interested in kind of learning more about that. I guess where I'll be talking more about the topic of solvents in the industry. But here is a really cool concept to explain maybe viscosity and how the bitumen is being drained by gravity and the underlying kind of physics, if you will, behind it. I did make a video about density concept API where I explain in detail the importance of that. This is kind of another really important topic when it comes to really understanding the concept of thermal recovery. So here's a chart here from Malhotra and Sverchik, 1986 study on basically viscosity reduction as function of temperature increase, and Ashrafi uh, et al. 2011 study. So this study I took from this website called Flow of Heavy Oils at Low Temperatures: Potential Challenges and Solutions by Intech Open. So here, let's open that. So I guess there's a book called Processing of Heavy Crude Oils: Challenges and Opportunities by Marapa Gounder, and there's a gentleman called Imad Suleiman that did kind of a summary on that. So if you guys interested, take a look. But long story short, what this chart does, it shows you essentially what's going on when bitumen is being drained by gravity and as function of steam. So imagine basically an injector and a producer, and now you inject steam from the injector and you produce oil from the producer, and you develop the steam chamber by gravity, right? Initially you circulate the two to create communication between the injector and producer, but now steam is being injected, and the more steam being injected, the more it has like basically contact with the sides of the steam chambers, and heat transfer that takes place. And in the process, the viscosity of that oil initially, before you circulated, before you did any heat transfer, is at those levels. So it's somewhere between a million to 10 million centipoise. It could be actually be higher. But what we're thinking about here is essentially like that pay is essentially like a hockey puck. So it's a giant hockey puck that now you need to drain by gravity. So that injection of steam essentially results in steam chamber growth and drainage of more and more oil over time. And what ends up happening when it comes to viscosity, you essentially see reduction in that viscosity as function of the increase in temperature. So when you increase the temperature in the steam chamber, the more steam you inject, the more heat transfer you get, and in some point you get kind of basically 200 degrees or so, where the viscosity is about, I would say, 10 centipoise or so. But the question is, like, if you're trying to understand the dynamics here, is like, okay, well, at 50 degrees we're getting to 10,000 centipoise. At 100, sorry, at the 50, yeah, so at 50 degrees we get to 10,000 centipoise. At 100 degrees we get to maybe 500 centipoise. What is that flow of viscosity? So what does it mean really for things to flow? And just as a quick reminder, um, the reciprocal of viscosity is it's likely like fluidity, if you will. It's basically a measure of ease of flow, and viscosity denotes the opposition to the flow, right? So it's essentially resistance of the fluid or liquid or gas in the movement, right? In relativity to the neighboring portion. So it could be a pipe, it could be a reservoir. And so if you think about an example to what I'm talking about, a good example could be, let's say, molasses, where it has greater viscosity than water because part of fluid that is forced to move carries along to some extent adjacent parts viscosity, uh, maybe the of as internal friction between the molecules, right? Such friction opposes the development of velocity um, differences within a fluid. So there's lots of kind of nuances. I don't necessarily want to go to in huge details and kind of physical equations and such. But consider that viscosity here is in centipoise, and the temperature is in degrees Celsius. And as I mentioned before, you have essentially at 500 centipoise, you achieve that by bringing that bitumen to 100 degrees Celsius. And so right now, let's kind of better understand what it means if we look at other fluids or liquids, right? So if you have a type of liquid that's water, uh, essentially it will be about, let's say, 1 centipoint, right? Like at normal conditions. Cream will be maybe 20 centipoise. Honey will be 1500 centipoise. Molasses could be 8600 centipoise. What else? Tomato juice 180. So let's take a look at something relatable, somewhere between honey and glue. So 1500 centipoise is honey, 3000 centipoise is glue. So let's look at this table. 1500 is about here, and 3000 is about here. So that's a very critical point where the quality of kind of the viscosity drainage, the flow, it could be very gluey at 3000 centipoise, and it could be kind of more not as viscous, I would say, when it comes to honey. But of course, you want kind of further reduction, right? You want to get to something closer to water, which is about 1 centipoise. So, or tomato juice at 180, if you will, right? So you want some flow that will be economic when you inject that steam and you produce that oil production. And so that's essentially kind of what's going on here, where you need to keep reducing that viscosity on the chart as function of the temperature increase. So this is also a chart that I'm familiar with. This chart was taken from this website here. So this website here is like a study, I guess, predicting oil sands viscosity from well logs using an industry provided data set by Eric Robs and Lawrence Lines. But I guess it's a figure of oil viscosity by grade category that was taken from Conoco's website, I assume with their permission, but this is in the public domain. So this really helps us to better understand the flow of that bitumen, right? Um, as function of the temperature, and really combining what I showed here, where we have all those like different liquids, and the chart for viscosity reduction, where at this point we understand that viscosity needs to be reduced as function of temperature. Otherwise, it's just not gonna flow freely. And here we can start kind of seeing examples of, um, at 20 degrees or so, right? You'll have peanut butter flowing at maybe like, I don't know, a million centipoise, right? This is like maybe 5 million centipoise here. Ketchup will be somewhere like 75,000 centipoise. Molasses will be 10,000 centipoise. And this is kind of the extra heavy stuff, right? Maple syrup. And the heavy oils, they're kind of intriguing because the density for those oils is lower, but also they're not as viscous, right? So now we start seeing that partitioning of heavy oils between 10 to 100 centipoints, which is cream to olive oil. And conventional oils, they basically flow between 1 to 10 centipoise, which is like water to cream. So in this range. Now, typical oil in the ground, what we see, I'm not sure exactly what this refers to, but um, the kind of virgin conditions for that oil in the reservoir will be somewhere in this range, like what they note here with this. And now we're going kind of down that viscosity chart as we increase the temperature in the reservoir to drain that oil at high rate, so it can be drained by gravity. And so on that talk that I'm gonna do on October 29th, I'm gonna be talking a little bit other opportunities on how this chart could be modified a little bit, where you able to achieve essentially, um, uh, you know, different kind of types of viscosity drainage, if you will. So maybe you can achieve viscosity reduction a little bit faster at the same temperatures, and kind of achieve that this level maybe at 150 degrees. So something like that. Not exact chart, but I will show some of this data, and I'll give you a clue. Some of the reasons to how you would do that is that This recovery factor, where sorry, not recovery factor, this drainage application is really about conduction, when you conduct heat transfer, right? Where you inject steam, and oil and water, like, or steam, do not mix. So as you know, oil and water don't mix, so steam does not basically dissolves in oil in a lake phase. But if you were to inject something like solvent, it could have solubility effects, where you're looking now at something like a recovery scheme that's not just by conduction but also by convection, where you basically mix liquids and you're able to reduce their viscosity faster. So essentially, just think about, if you were to inject something like, in this case, I don't know what's close to oil, SAE10 oil, I guess that's 88 centipoise. If that was like applicable and soluble, then the mixture of the two will be able to reduce that viscosity further. And so I will be talking more about kind of light hydrocarbons, like propanes and such, that able to do that. And the other thing you could reduce viscosity is obviously radiation, right? So something like electromagnetic heating, right? Applications. Um, when it comes to kind of different basically waves that are kind of propagate through the electromagnetic uh, radiation. It could be like radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet, x-rays, gamma rays. So all kind of different applications that can go through that the bitumen, right? But my focus is going to be mainly on that behavior of conduction and convection benefits, and really trying to look kind of where the industry stands. And the data going to be shared going to be from the public domain, but I'm gonna kind of talk about my personal experiences and the journey of being technology developer in the industry, and mostly kind of showcasing where we're at as an industry and overall, at least from what's being shared by companies from the public domain. So just wanted to say a big thank you again for supporting me, for listening to these videos, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye.